Sadness and outrage tonight after another school shooting in America.
Good afternoon, this is News 2, and we're following a breaking story today, a shooting at a high school in Littleton, Colorado.
There's word potentially multiple children have been killed. This happened at the Robb Elementary School in the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District.
2012 Colorado movie theater massacre.
7 bodies were discovered in Oklahoma.
2 mosques in Christchurch were targeted, the country's worst mass shooting ever.
Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm excited to bring you guys this video. There have been a lot of suggestions to do this case in particular, so I'm glad I finally was able to get around to it. I really spent a lot of time on this case, and I did my best to make it easy to follow, while also being as descriptive as I could be. I apologize if some parts are a little confusing. I had a bit of a rough time going through the many sources, as there was some differing information. As always, I do my absolute best to find the most accurate and up-to-date information regarding each case I cover. But there is always a chance that something inaccurate has made its way in. If you notice anything like this, please do let me know in the comments, and I will do my best to fix it. It is never my intention to include incorrect information. Thank you all for being understanding. Without further ado, let's get into this extremely horrific case. Home to over 128,000 people, Thousand Oaks, California, is the second largest city in Ventura County. The bustling city is located approximately 40 miles to the west of downtown Los Angeles. The city of Thousand Oaks was incorporated in 1964, named after the countless oak trees in the area. Compared to other communities with similar size and population, Thousand Oaks is consistently ranked as one of the safest cities in the United States. Despite its size, with it being such a safe place to live, the city had really never suffered mass violence. But that ended on November 7th, 2018. The Borderline Bar and Grill first opened its doors back in the late 1980s, with the location being along the Pacific Coast Highway in the nearby city of Malibu, California. A few years later, in 1993, the bar was relocated to 99 Rolling Oaks Drive in Thousand Oaks, California. This bar was a Western-themed one, with a giant cowboy hat and disco ball saddle hovered above the dance floor. The famous Borderline, where your boots meet the beach banner, also hung nearby. The Borderline Bar and Grill boasts itself as the largest country dance hall and live music venue. The building it inhabited was 11,124 square feet, 2,500 of which was occupied by the wide-open dance floor alone. The bar also included a stage, a pool table room, several areas for eating and drinking, as well as a large dance hall. It was a popular hangout for the students who attended the nearby California Lutheran University. Multiple other universities were located within a 25-minute drive, such as California State University Channel Islands in Camarillo, Pepperdine University in Malibu, California State University Northridge and Moorpark College, located in the city of Moorpark. Wednesdays were deemed as college nights, so naturally college students would flock to the bar on Wednesday evenings more so than other nights. The bar also opened its doors to people starting at 18 years of age, which invited a bigger crowd, especially during college nights. The Ventura County Sheriff's Office remarks that the Borderline Bar and Grill was not a place that would be considered a problem establishment. The rate of calls received from this location were usually much lower than other bars in the area. In fact, between November of 2017 and November of 2018, only 36 calls were made to police concerning the bar. Only 4 of them were listed as violent in nature. Around 11 p.m. on Wednesday, November 7, 2018, the Borderline Bar and Grill was alive with a crowd of happy patrons. There were around 260 people in the bar that night, including employees and customers. The event that evening was called College Country Night, which was a popular event, especially for the students living nearby. At 11:18 p.m., a hooded gunman wearing all black, later identified as Ian David Long, entered the Borderline Bar and Grill, armed with a .45 caliber Glock 21, with an attached Viridian X5L tactical weapon light and laser sight, all of which were legally purchased. He also was in possession of 7 banned high-capacity magazines, also carrying a total of 190 rounds. Long also brought a folding knife, 10 smoke bombs, and 2 fireworks along with him that night. The events that ensued after he entered the bar that night would rock the entire community. Before I get into those details, though, let's talk about Ian Long's life. Ian David Long, born on March 27, 1990, was a 28-year-old former U.S. Marine. He served 5 years in the Marines as a machine gunner and toured in Afghanistan while on active duty. Long grew up living with his mother after his father died from cancer when he was young. As a child, Long was described by many as a very serious, intense kid with a short temper. When he was in 3rd grade, his mother started to notice that he liked to be in charge at all times. She recalled that she couldn't even pack his backpack without him questioning her about what she had placed inside. When he was about 8 years old, his mother got a job offer in Europe. He and his mother ended up moving there and stayed for approximately 18 months before moving back to the United States. Long attended a few high schools, but for the last 2 years, he attended Newbury Park High School. Although there isn't much known about his time here, it is known that he participated in the school's baseball team. His old coach, Scott Druten, said, quote, "He was a very intense person. He didn't seem like a happy kid. It was really hard to get him to smile." He also reportedly had many girlfriends in high school, though he never landed in a serious relationship. In 2006, Long and his mother moved to a house on Fowler Avenue in Newbury Park, which was near Thousand Oaks, California. They continued to live here, right up until the setting of today's video. After Long left high school in 2008, he signed up for the United States Marine Corps in Los Angeles. He trained as a machine gunner and was later assigned to the 1st Battalion, 3rd Marine Regiment in Hawaii. His fellow soldiers described him as a fitness fanatic that loved to work out with loud music playing. During his time in the Marines, Long married a woman named Stavrula Tsavaras in 2009. Long handled heavy machine guns while in direct combat. He was deployed to Afghanistan on November 16, 2009, and came back with a Combat Action Ribbon when he returned on June 14, 2011. This ribbon meant he engaged with the enemy in battle. He also received the Marine Corps Good Conduct Medal during his service. He was last stationed in Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii. Long was honorably discharged from the Marines in 2013 with the rank of corporal. He and his wife got officially divorced around this time, after being separated since 2011. After his service in the Marines, seeking a change in career, Long enrolled in athletic training at California State University. He stated later in an online forum, quote, "I found out a little too late that it just wasn't the job for me. Maybe my ego got the better of me, but it took only one time for a 19-year-old D2 athlete to talk down to me and tell me how to do my job when I realized this wasn't the career I wanted to have." Near the end of his training, 2 months before he graduated, Long dropped out of the California State University. He last attended class in 2016 and never graduated from his athletic training major. School officials said that he was seemingly unable to handle the responsibilities. A previous roommate of Long's, living with him twice in 2012 and 2014, David Winnett, recalls that he was kind of weird and would often lock himself in his room, presumably to study on his computer. Winnett says that he never saw Long get violent in the time while living with him, though. They had also gone to the Borderline Grill and Bar to hang out before. I also read in some sources that Long was known to enjoy underground dance events and would let loose when attending them, which wasn't something he would often do. The Ventura County Sheriff's spokesman, Jeff Dean, told the press that Long was well known by the local police, as he had several run-ins with them. He was previously involved in a traffic collision, the date of which is not known. Dean also said that Long was the victim of a battery at a local bar in 2015. In April of 2018, a neighbor of his, Tom Hansen, called 911, making a complaint about the noise over at Long's home. Hansen told the local media later, quote, "It sounded like he was tearing down the walls of the house. It would start and then it would stop and then it would get really loud and I hear this shouting." Hansen also claimed to be concerned for the family. Quote, "I didn't know if he was going to kill himself or what he would do." Another neighbor, Donald McLeod, said that he would hear gunfire at night, as well as frequent arguments between Long and his mother. When police arrived to address the noise complaint, they knocked on the Fowler Avenue house, and according to spokesperson Dean, they were met with Long, who was, quote, "somewhat irate and acting irrationally." Dean also said that police called in their crisis intervention team, as well as the mental health team. They felt he might be suffering from PTSD based on the fact that he was a veteran, Dean said. After talking with Long, they determined that he was not an immediate danger to himself or others. Therefore, they could not admit him involuntarily. It would only be a few months before their evaluation would prove to be wildly incorrect. The neighbor, Hansen, said that Long had been living at his mom's home with their 3 dogs for the past 6 to 8 years, and that the neighbors knew he had issues. Long's mother was also said to be living in fear of her son and what he would do. She reportedly told her neighbor that she was concerned about her son and his actions. However, she made it clear to police that he had never physically harmed her. Now, let's jump back into the events of November 7th, 2018. Long, who had just made the short drive from his home that he shared with his mother to the Borderline Bar and Grill, stepped out of his car and proceeded up the stairs to the entrance of the building. As he stepped into the bar, he suddenly opened fire on the crowd consisting of patrons and bar employees. 12 people were killed in the crowd that night, and nearly 24 others were injured. I was unable to find any particular order of who died first, but regardless, I wanted to say a bit about each victim before getting into the extensive details of the horrific event. Sean Adler was a 48-year-old bouncer and security guard for the Borderline Bar and Grill, as well as a nearby bar called Azar's Sports Bar. He was married to his wife, and together they had 2 sons, who were 12 and 17 at the time. His close and longtime friend Debbie Allen remarked that Sean was known for staying late at the bar regularly to ensure the customers and employees left in a safe manner. Allen said, quote, "He was a very, very big personality and had a very, very gorgeous smile. I don't think in all the years I've known him, and it's been almost 30, I ever heard him say no to someone." Sean was known by most to always be a positive person, and to be someone who never stopped smiling. Less than 3 weeks before the shooting, Sean opened a coffee shop called Rivalry Roasters in the nearby Simi Valley, California. He was reportedly an avid coffee enthusiast, and he always dreamed of owning his own store. Sean continued to work as a security guard for the 2 bars to support his family, while his coffee shop got off the ground. His mother told the Los Angeles Times that her son once had aspired to become a cop. He was training with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office before he unexpectedly suffered a heart attack and had to quit just a year before the shooting. Sean reportedly attempted to disarm Long when he began shooting into the crowded bar that Wednesday night, and his close friends and family boasted that this bravery came as no surprise. Many say that Sean was selfless and would absolutely put himself in danger to protect others. Sean was possibly the first person to be killed by Long that night, though some sources say that the bar's cashier was the first casualty. During the vigil held for Sean, his oldest son Dylan said, quote, "I've had 3-4 people come up to me and say, 'If it wasn't for your dad, I probably would not be here today.'" Dylan also said, quote, "He ran at the guy and tried to stop him. In the meantime, he saved dozens and dozens of lives. Those people he saved get to go home to their family and tell them what my dad did." Hundreds of people gathered around him and his family as they spoke about Sean, all sharing stories with one another. Sean was labeled a hero, which he certainly was. If it weren't for his brave actions that night, who knows how many more casualties there would have been. Cody Kaufman, 22, was en route to fulfill his dream of joining the U.S. military, according to his father, Jason Kaufman. He had 3 younger brothers, between the ages of 6 and 9. Cody and his father regularly went on fishing trips together, as it was a hobby that they both shared, and they enjoyed spending time with each other. Jason said that his son had only recently moved back into their house about a month before and had plans to enlist in the military. Cody was working as a mover at the time and was starting to settle down from his rowdy stage in life. Going to the bar with his friends on Wednesday night was a ritual for Cody, according to NBCnews.com. Jason said that on that particular Wednesday night, shortly before Cody left for the bar, he spoke with his son. Quote, "The last thing I said was, 'Son, I love you.'" After hearing of his son's death, his father said, quote, "Somebody told us he was shielding some girls at the door when the guy came in. That's my boy. He's a hero now. That's how I view him, as a hero." Cody's friend Sarah Deason was also at the bar that night and managed to survive the shooting. According to her, after the shooter opened fire, Cody helped her and countless others to escape the building, but stayed behind to assist many more people in getting out. Deason said, quote, "He had the peace of mind to direct us toward the exit, telling us when to get down, when to get up. I remember he stood up at one point and yelled for us to get out. I left. I did what he told me to do. He's my hero, and he is now my angel." She also says that she wishes Cody would have followed her out of the bar that night, but that she's grateful that he likely saved multiple lives by not doing so. Another victim from that night was Blake Dingman, who was a 21-year-old who lived in Newbury Park. He worked as an electrician and was excited to work alongside his parents after they opened up their own construction company. When Blake was growing up, his parents recall that he was able to quickly learn anything that he put his mind to. He also excelled at any sport he played. Blake also had a passion for cars and motorcycles, owning one of each. Him and his brother enjoyed going out on rides together. His brother Aiden wrote in a tribute, quote, "Words cannot express the pain I'm feeling. Last night changed my life forever. We tried for hours and hours to get in touch with Blake and got no response. This morning I was informed that my amazing brother was taken down by the shooter." He also wrote that his brother had been at the bar with his best friend named Jake Dunham that night, who also lost his life during the shooting. At 11:24 p.m. on November 7th, 2018, Blake's mother, Lori, received a call from one of the two friends who had been with Blake that night. They had walked out after saying goodbye to the other two, and they walked right past the shooter. Then they heard the shooting start, says Lori. Blake's father, mother, and brother rushed to the bar to look for Blake. Aiden was interviewed by the media, and he attempted to get any information on his brother since he was not picking up the phone. Both Blake and his friend Jake were remembered at a joint memorial. 2 benches were built in the area where the two would often go off-roading together. Lori got a tattoo on her arm of a note that Blake wrote, saying "Love you," with a heart drawn underneath, to always remember her son. Blake's family continues to miss him every day and reminds people to be kind to one another. Blake's best friend Jake Dunham, who died alongside him during the shooting, was also 21 at the time, and as mentioned before, the two loved to go off-roading together. Jake shared the same passion for cars as Blake, so naturally the two were close friends. Jake's father, Ken, told NBC News, "I kept calling his phone, but there's no answer. It just kept ringing, and he always answers his phone." Jake and Blake's friends held an event to honor the both of them, highlighting their passion for racing and off-roading that they both shared. The Dunham family also got tattoos of the last messages written by Jake, serving as a constant reminder of him. Sadly, his family chose not to celebrate Thanksgiving or Christmas without him that year, but they said they did eventually go back to their normal routine, turning to each other for strength and support. Unfortunately, I couldn't find as much information on Jake, but I tried to include as much as I could, without violating his family's privacy that they requested. Elena Housley, who was 18, was the youngest person killed in the attack. She was described as an exceptional student and a well-mannered, beautiful person. At the time, she was enrolled as a freshman at the nearby school of Pepperdine University and was planning to study law, according to her family. Elena was only enrolled in the university for a few short months before her death. She was the niece of Adam Housley, who married Sister star Tamara Mowry Housley. Tamara later reminisced about old times with her on Instagram. Elena attended the college night event at the bar with some of her friends on that Wednesday evening. Following the shooting, Elena's roommate along with her university both put out statements saying that she was unaccounted for, asking anyone with any information to come forward. Later, the university issued a statement that confirmed her death. Nearly every account of her personality I saw stated she was a wonderful, friendly, and positive girl. Many said that she was extremely magnetic, the type of person everyone wanted to be around. Following her death, Elena's body was escorted back to her hometown of Napa, California. Hundreds upon hundreds of friends and strangers lined the streets to pay their respects to her as her body was driven by. Daniel Manrique was a 33-year-old military veteran who dedicated his life to helping other veterans readjust to civilian life after leaving the military. Daniel was deployed to Afghanistan as a Marine Corps radio operator in 2007, The Washington Post reports. He returned to California after serving 6 years, discharged from the military in 2010. In 2012, he found a job at a veterans nonprofit called Team Red, White, and Blue. 2 years later, in 2014, he became the chapter's captain and within a month before the shooting, he landed the job with the group as a regional program manager. Spokesperson for Team Red, White, and Blue, Bonna Miller said, quote, "He touched hundreds of thousands of vets." Daniel was the oldest of 4 children and was living with his parents at the time, though he was set to move out of their home within the next week. Daniel's friend and business partner Tim O'Brien said when talking about Daniel, quote, "The best way I can describe him is as a saint. He truly believed in service. Dan was the guy you could rely on if you ran out of gas in the middle of the night. He would help you out if something bad happened. He was there, dedicated, loyal." Tim and Daniel were preparing to open a veteran-oriented brewery at the time of Daniel's death. The name for the brewery was going to be Obrique, a combination of their last names. Daniel was also known to volunteer to help the homeless population, as well as volunteering at a local church, working in the daycare department. It's so unfortunate to think that even though he dedicated his life to assisting emotionally scarred veterans get back on their feet, his own death would be at the hands of a veteran that could have benefited from his work. This incident only highlights the importance of what people like Daniel do, helping veterans to get emotional and mental support when they desperately need it. 23-year-old Justin Meek was also among the several victims that died as a result of the shooting. He had previously graduated from Cal Lutheran University with a bachelor's degree in criminology and criminal justice. While he had already graduated, he came back and spent 2 years in a work-study job at the Veterans Resource Office at Cal Lutheran. There, he would meet with veterans that entered the office and also help them to fill out their financial aid paperwork. Both of Justin's parents served in the U.S. military. His mom was previously in the Air Force, and his father was a Navy SEAL. This is perhaps why he gravitated to helping veterans while working at the university. Justin himself was actually planning to join the U.S. Coast Guard, an equal compromise between the Air Force and the Navy. There was honestly so much that Justin was good at and had accomplished. Justin was a very talented cook, and he was on board for preparing over 100 meals for the students of Cal Lutheran at the upcoming Veterans Day lunch. He also was a dancer and an exceptional musician. Many people that knew Justin say that he was a promoter of college night at the Borderline Bar, working there that Wednesday night as a bouncer. When the university learned of his death, the 4,400 plus students and staff were absolutely shocked. The entire chapel was filled with gasps and wails when his death was announced during a regularly scheduled prayer meeting the day after the shooting. One of Justin's friends, Fernan, who was there with him the night of the shooting, said, quote, "He put himself in front of people. That's the kind of person he was. He knew how to take care of people, coming from a military family." I couldn't possibly list all of the amazing things I read about Justin. There was just so much. He really seemed like an amazing person, who would have gone on to do astounding things in his life. Another of the 12 victims was 21-year-old Noelle Sparks. Noelle was named after her father's sister, Colette Noelle Sparks, who had passed away at the age of 16 in a house fire. In memory of her, her parents named her Noelle Colette Sparks. At the time of her death, Noelle was studying at Moorpark College. She was known for her love of singing, dancing, playing cello, and making pottery. Noelle was active in the United Methodist Church when she was young, serving at the choir and in Sunday groups. She was someone that reportedly volunteered and helped with every activity. From being a church camp counselor to babysitting for church members, Noelle was always eager to help. Following the news of her death, numerous friends of hers took to social media to express their grief over their loss. One of her church friends, Madison Nenkervis, made a post to her Facebook page, quote, "One of the victims of the shooting was a dear church friend of my family, and such an amazing soul." Another friend, Sarah Penrose, said in a Facebook post, quote, "She was always so joyful to help others and fill needs. Wishing I could have spent more time with her before this happened. Even though we knew something was very wrong after we hadn't heard from her all morning, and the others were connecting with their loved ones, it doesn't make this heartbreaking news any easier to bear." Noelle loved to attend the events at the Borderline Bar, especially eager to participate in the line dancing events they held. Her memorial service was attended by many, many people. Nearly every Kleenex box in the building was empty by the time the memorial ended. A slideshow displaying pictures and videos of Noelle was played during the service, including clips of her many performances in the church choir. Noelle seemed like the type of person that strived to help anyone in any way that she could. No matter what someone needed, She was always up to assist in any way that she could. The world lost an absolutely beautiful soul when Noelle was killed. Telemachus Orphanos, who went by Tel, was a 27-year-old young man who also attended Moorpark College. He was also a military veteran who served in the U.S. Navy from 2011 to 2014, according to Fox News. Tel was reported to be working at the Borderline Bar, as well as the local Infinity car dealership, as a concierge and product specialist during the time of his death. Heartbreakingly, Tel had managed to survive a separate mass shooting just a year prior to his death. On October 1st, 2017, Tel was attending the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival in Las Vegas when the crowd was fired upon by 64-year-old Stephen Paddock. 58 people were killed in this shooting, while hundreds more were injured. Tel managed to get out of the incident unharmed, but sadly would be killed in the Borderline Bar and Grill shooting just over a year later, on November 7th, 2018. His mother, Susan, gave a heart-wrenching interview the day after her son was killed, saying, quote, "My son was in Las Vegas with a lot of his friends, and he came home. He didn't come home last night." Also, during her interview, his mom stated, quote, "I don't want prayers, I don't want thoughts, I want gun control. I just feel so terrible for his family. The emotions that would overcome you after narrowly avoiding losing your child in a mass shooting, just to end up actually losing them in the same way very shortly after, would be unbearable." Tel's father, Mark, said that he believes the shooter is as much of a victim as anyone else. He said, quote, "I'm not going to vilify this kid because he's got parents that are grieving too, and I feel sorry for them as well. Until I find out particularly what the specifics are with this kid who did the shooting, I'm not going to be vilifying him. It takes a lot of strength as a parent to not despise the person who took your own child's life. I wasn't able to find what Tel's father's stance on the shooter and his motivations are now, but regardless, his family lost a wonderful person that night." 20-year-old Christina Morissette was another unfortunate victim in the Borderline Bar and Grill shooting. She was born and grew up in Simi Valley, graduating from Simi Valley High School. Christina was described as a free spirit, who was also fiercely independent. She had just bought her first car, which was a Jeep Renegade. In the future, she was planning to move to Texas to learn how to train service animals. Christina was reportedly working as a cashier at the front desk in the bar the night she was killed. This job suited her well, as Christina loved to meet new people, so being able to greet people as they entered the bar was perfect for her friendly and outgoing personality. Brandon Boning, who grew up with Christina, said, quote, "Christina was always the nicest girl. She never had a frown on her face. It was rare. She always had a positive attitude about everything. She never picked on anyone growing up." After learning of her death, he said, "It was heartbreaking to know it was her. Growing up with her, it's hard to see stuff like that. I'm wishing her family the best, and I'm sending my condolences to them." By all accounts, Christina was an exceptionally kind girl. Everyone who knew her will always have a big part of their lives missing. It was ripped away the night she was killed. Over 900 people attended her memorial, filling and overflowing out of the venue. Christina's many friends gathered there, wearing cowboy hats and boots. She will forever be missed by the many people she impacted during her short life. The next victim was also an employee of the Borderline Bar and Grill, and his name was Marky Meza Jr. In less than 2 weeks, it would have been his 21st birthday, which he unfortunately never made it to. At the time, he was employed at the bar as a busboy and food runner, and was there working on the night of the shooting. Marky had a huge and infectious smile, with many saying that he loved to give big hugs. His entire family absolutely loved him. He was close with his cousins, who he would often go swimming and wakeboarding with. I also read that Marky was always the type of person to volunteer to help whenever he could. It was stated that he was always the first to offer his help at family events, usually setting up chairs and helping with the food. In a statement to KEYT, Marky's family said, quote, "Marky was a loving and wonderful young man who was full of life and ambition. His family is devastated by his loss. Marky would have turned 21 on November 19th. His family asks for peace and respect at this time to allow them to grieve properly." His memorial service was held on the day before he would have turned 21. During this service, attendees were able to write messages on smooth beach stones, as they said their last goodbye to Marky. And last, but certainly not least, was 54-year-old Sergeant Ron Hellis, nicknamed Ronbo. Sergeant Hellis was married, and also a father to one son. He was only a year away from retiring from the Ventura County Sheriff's Department when he got the call to respond to an active shooting at the Borderline Bar and Grill. Ron also had a private side business, where he taught gun safety to people who were seeking to get permits to carry concealed weapons. He also was a firearms instructor for the sheriff's recruits at a basic training academy. Sergeant Ron was described by all as a good man. Everyone that knew him recalled his hilarious personality. He reportedly wasn't a super serious person, always ready to crack a joke when needed. He was quick to laugh, said Scott Horton, who attended the police academy with Ron. He didn't take himself too seriously. Ron loved to be outdoors, often finding himself camping or fishing in the mountains. His Facebook page was filled with photos from his adventures, pictures of rivers, deer, trees, and even mountain lions. After his death, his Facebook page became sort of a memorial, with many people flocking there to post the fond memories they shared with Ron. In the hours before he was killed, Ron spent his evening backing up other officers on calls. The last thing that Ron said to his wife on the phone before being dispatched to the bar was, quote, "Hey, I gotta go handle a call. I love you. I'll talk to you later." Sadly, Ron would never have the opportunity to see his wife or family again. That night he died a hero, trying to protect the people of the community in which he served. Sergeant Eric Busho had nothing but good things to say about his coworker Ron. He said, "He went there to save lives. He took a decisive action, and it's just a huge loss for us." Sergeant Busho and Sergeant Hellis had started at the Sheriff's Department around the same time, 29 years ago. This was in his blood. He had a natural instinct for going after crooks, and he did it with enthusiasm, with a great deal of intelligence, Busho said. The day after his death, his body was escorted from Los Robles Hospital to the county medical examiner's office in a huge procession led by several officers on motorcycles and in vehicles. Now, after giving a little insight to who each victim was, we will get into the terrifying events of November 7th, 2018. Most of the following events come from an official Ventura County Sheriff's Office report. As Long made his way to the bar from his home, his car was possibly captured on a nearby California highway patrolman's car's dash cam, though it's not confirmed. Either way, after his short drive, Ian David Long arrived at the Borderline Bar and Grill, hopped out of his car, and entered the building at 11:18 p.m. Long was seen on security cameras as he approached the front entrance of the bar. He was wearing dark pants, a dark-colored long-sleeve jacket, and a dark baseball cap. He reportedly passed 3 male bar patrons who had just left the building. Long didn't appear to converse with any of these individuals, let alone acknowledge them. On a different camera, Long was seen as he ascended the staircase, up to the front porch. It was here that he reached towards the waistband of his pants. Unfortunately, a large portion of the events captured by security cameras is redacted, so I had to just go on what they haven't censored. Just as a reminder, Long was armed with a .45 caliber Glock 21, with an attached Viridian X5L tactical weapon light and laser sight, all of which were legally purchased. He also was in possession of 7 banned high-capacity magazines, carrying a total of 190 rounds. Long also brought a folding knife, 10 smoke bombs, and 2 fireworks along with him that night. Within seconds of entering the building, Long opened fire. He shot and killed either Sean Adler, the security guard, or Christina Morissette, the cashier, first, but nevertheless, they both likely died before the other 10 victims. He then turned his attention to the rest of the room and opened fire on the crowd of approximately 260 people. This first round of shooting totaled about 61 rounds fired. Long had actually shot 13 people during his rampage, but one person actually ended up surviving. It was within these first few frantic minutes that most of the victims died, left to lay on the floor of the bar. At least one of the victims died while charging at Long, attempting to subdue him. The first 911 call came in at 11:19, 1 minute after Long was reported to have arrived at the location of his rampage. The caller reported that he heard 6 to 8 gunshots, but said they hadn't personally seen anything. Seconds later, another call came in. This time it was just an open line. The 911 operator heard frantic patrons in the background. Again, another call flooded into the 911 dispatchers, this time from an employee at the borderline, who reported the shooting. In total, there were an astounding 94 911 calls that came in during and after the shooting. The hundreds of people in the bar began to escape the gunfire in any way that they could, shattering windows with tables and chairs, running through employee-only areas, with some people even hiding in the attic or bathrooms. Apparently, during his attack, Long picked up a phone dropped by one of the fleeing patrons and answered a phone call coming in from their mother. I'm not sure how true this claim is, so just take it with a grain of salt. I also saw that it was during this time that he made several posts to social media where he was expressing his thoughts. I will bring this point back up later in the video. Soon after this, Long retreated to the front office, where he took shelter, knowing that authorities would likely be on their way soon. As he entered, the lights illuminated the room. He appeared to drop a smoke grenade on the ground in the office, but it reportedly failed to ignite. Long set his gun down on the desk and reached for a second smoke grenade. This time it successfully ignited, and he threw it out of the office and out into the bar. Long then took a third grenade out, pulled the pin, and tossed it. This time it landed just outside of the office doorway. Long then raised his gun, putting himself back into a shooting position, and began aggressively shooting while stepping towards the doorway. I'm not sure what he was shooting at during this burst, possibly the people attempting to flee? After all, during this time, patrons can be seen on surveillance footage frantically trying to escape. They were seen throwing bar stools at the windows lining the north wall, attempting to create an escape route. One man in particular, Matt Wennerstrom, became a hero to many that night. As the shooting went on, he reportedly rushed to save others as most people fled. He risked his own life by shielding others, and when he thought the time was right, he shattered windows with a bar stool, helping as many as 35 people escape before saving himself. 1 minute after the shooting began, at 11:19 p.m., two California Highway Patrol officers, Officer Barrett and Officer Espinoza, were performing a traffic stop nearby. These are the same Highway Patrol officers that may have captured Long's vehicle as it drove by on their dash cam. Suddenly, an unknown male bar patron from the borderline approached them yelling,
Where? There's deputies right there. I'll let dispatch know.
After telling the person they pulled over to get out of there, the two officers jumped in their patrol car. They wasted no time responding to this deadly incident, arriving at the bar within a minute after hearing of the shooting. They stayed in the parking lot, though, corresponding with dispatch about the ongoing situation. Inside the bar, Long was seen on security cameras, throwing a fourth smoke grenade out into the bar from the office, followed by a fifth and a sixth. Long then proceeded to turn the lights in the office off, before he stepped backward, deeper into the room. This is when he activated the laser sight mounted on his handgun. During this time, an unarmed off-duty officer who had been in the bar that night was seen on cameras running around to various areas of the exterior of the bar. He was punching out windows with a shirt-covered fist so that other people would be able to escape the building. When Officer Barrett and Officer Espinoza arrived on scene, the off-duty officer ran to them, describing the shooter as a white male wearing black on black clothing. 4 minutes later, Sergeant Ron Helis joined the two California Highway Patrol officers in the parking lot. Shortly after his arrival, the three officers quickly devised a calculated plan and moved in. They were uninterested in waiting around for a SWAT team. They knew that it was vital to subdue the shooter as fast as they could. Together, the three of them slowly made their way to the building. Both were armed with rifles, while Officer Espinoza was armed with a shotgun. Their intention was to engage with the shooter as quickly as possible, in order to stop any additional loss of life. Little did the officers know that the suspect was able to see their every move, monitoring them on 9 security camera feeds located in the front office. Before entering the building, Sergeant Helis halted and spoke briefly with a nearby patron, asking, quote, "Do you know where the shooter is?" To which the patron replied something along the lines of, "Inside and to the right. I haven't seen him come out this side." Helis replied, "Okay, The three officers make their way up the front steps to the front door. Sergeant Helis is in the very front, followed by Officer Barrett close behind and to the left. Officer Espinoza stayed behind while the other two approached the entrance. Officer Barrett decided to change his position and walk directly behind Sergeant Helis. Cautiously, Sergeant Helis peeked inside of the bar, using the flashlight on his rifle to scan the room, unable to spot the suspect. The officers noticed multiple people down, which motivated them further to enter the building. Upon entry, the two officers slowly and carefully made their way through the room. As they got closer, Long opened fire on the approaching officers anywhere from 7 to 14 feet away from them. The two officers returned fire, but none of either of their bullets would hit the shooter. During their returning fire, Officer Barrett made his way back to the front entrance, leaving the bar. He was seen running down the stairs, and when he reached the lower platform, he turned around and aimed his weapon, appearing to scan the area. Sergeant Helis also began his escape, but took a little longer as he was deeper into the building. As he was retreating, Sergeant Helis tripped on a velvet rope near the front doors, falling forward onto his stomach. Sergeant Helis was then seen on security cameras crawling on his hands and knees through the entrance to the porch. Through the dark, smoke-filled room, Sergeant Ron Helis was struck 5 times by Long's gunfire. Long had been using a laser sight on his pistol. Long, still firing from inside of the building, was aiming his shots towards the porch. The darkness and smoke both contributed to the fact that Officer Barrett didn't have a clear view, and he began to shoot in the direction of the opposing fire. Unfortunately, positioned between Long and Officer Barrett, Sergeant Helis was fatally shot in the heart, but not from the hands of Long, but from Officer Barrett's rifle. At this time, Long had retreated back into the office, where the cameras caught him picking up the landline phone, dialing 911, and holding it up to his ear. Long didn't speak one word during this call, and ended up hanging up shortly after. Sergeant Helis was now laying just outside of the front door, on the elevated porch. Unfortunately, this area was extremely dark, and impossible to see from ground level, so no one knew he was lying there, fatally wounded. After this initial gunfight with police, Long halted his vicious attack. The officers had kept him isolated in the office, like they were hoping would happen. Fortunately, there would be no more civilians shot or killed. Long just sat in the office, pacing around, periodically peeking out of the doorway. He was seen multiple times placing various items onto the desk. At 11:37 p.m., Long lit one of the fireworks he brought and threw it out of the front office door. About 40 seconds later, he did the same thing with the second firework he brought. He then sat down with his back against the west wall. At 11:38, less than a minute later, Long positioned the barrel of his gun under his chin and pulled the trigger, ending his own life. A rescue team was formed outside, made up of sheriff's deputies, California Highway Patrol officers, and a Simi Valley police officer. Once established, the group made their way to the front side of the building. During their approach, they discovered a deceased male body below the front windows. After a quick determination, they believed this could be the suspect, so they patted the body down, but they found no weapons. This body ended up being a patron who was shot to death as he attempted to flee through the window. I wasn't able to figure out exactly who this victim was, though. Anyway, the rescue team continued on their path, climbing the stairs to the front porch, where Sergeant Helis's body was finally located. After finding him, they quickly worked to get him to nearby paramedics. He was rushed to emergency surgery at Los Robles Hospital, but unfortunately, he didn't make it. Sergeant Helis wasn't removed from the scene until 20 minutes after he was fatally shot. Had the area been more illuminated, or lower to the ground, he would have likely been recovered much earlier. The rescue team again continued on their way, making entry to the bar through the front doors. Everyone was unaware that the shooter was already dead inside of the office, so they crept through the building cautiously. They came upon the front office, and upon entering, they discovered Long, with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Some officers cleared the entire building, finding and rescuing multiple people who had been hiding under tables, behind furniture, in bathrooms, and in the attic. Ventura County firefighters and a tactical emergency medical support team were escorted by officers into the bar. These medics were specifically there to assess and triage the victims who were shot. Unfortunately, all 12 victims were determined to have passed away prior to the team arriving. In total, 19 survivors were rescued from inside the bar. Approximately 128 people sustained injuries during their frantic escape, from bumps and bruises to deep lacerations, fractures, and dislocations. At least 29 people were treated for their injuries at various local hospitals. After the shooting, the man who saved at least 35 lives, Matt Wennerstrom, was interviewed by Eyewitness News. He said, quote, "All I did was grab as many people as I could and pull them underneath the table. And then, till I heard the shots, till I heard a break in the shots, and then we got people out of there as much as we could. I'm here to protect my friends, my family, and my fellow humans, and I know where I'm going if I die." Unfortunately, Matt's life came to an end on February 26, 2022, when he was involved in a fatal motorcycle accident. He is remembered by many as a hero. Back to the investigation. Once the shooter was officially declared as deceased, authorities worked to have the bar deemed safe. At this point, the shooter's identity was not known to the police, and they were worried that he may have not been the only attacker. Also, police were concerned that the shooter had planted incendiary or explosive devices around the bar, or even in his car that was outside in the parking lot. Because of this concern, bomb technicians along with K-9 units trained to sniff out explosives were brought into the scene. Fortunately, no evidence of any explosive devices was found. The Thousand Oaks Teen Center was used as the Borderline Family Reunification Center. This was a safe area where staff would be able to assist families in their reunification with those victimized by the attack. Next of kin notifications were also sent out from the teen center to the families of the 12 slain victims. A phone number was set up for people to call about information regarding the shooting. Numerous frantic families called, desperate to reunite with their loved ones. They were directed to the teen center and were told to make their way there in order to attempt to find their missing loved one if they hadn't already. Many different descriptions of the shooter were provided to 911 dispatch operators. Some described him as a white male, while others said he was Hispanic or Middle Eastern. This information made authorities question if there were indeed multiple suspects, so they wanted to locate as many patrons that were in the bar that night to interview them in an attempt to rule that concern out. As the weeks after the shooting went on, authorities were able to identify and speak with numerous witnesses. Each person's recount was slightly different, but one thing that they all had in common was that the shooter acted alone. This idea was later backed up by surveillance footage, which showed a single individual carrying out the fatal attack. Investigators were also able to see that the suspect did not appear to target anyone in particular. Rather, he was just shooting at random into the crowd. The town's only gun shop reported a massive increase in sales following the massacre, with multiple people coming in, looking to purchase a firearm for safety. The Ventura County Sheriff's Office was stretched thin during the investigation. In the days after the shooting, the Woolsey and Hill fires were raging nearby. In total, the fires burned over 100,000 acres of Los Angeles and Ventura County. Over 295,000 people had to be evacuated, which took a ton of the surrounding police resources. Many of the local and federal law enforcement officials that were assigned to assist in the Borderline bar and grill shooting were among the ones that had to evacuate their own homes with their families. Thankfully, the fire never got close enough to the crime scene to directly affect the ongoing investigation or processing of the scene. A ton of agencies and departments showed up to assist at the scene. Agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, and the Department of Defense were all deployed to the bar in order to assist in the investigation. The FBI was notably a huge help in this case, as they provided extensive resources for the processing of this complex and dynamic crime scene. They quickly established their lead with the crime scene preservation, evidence collection and identification, and the forensic processing of evidence. Within the first 24 hours following the shooting, the FBI had 148 agents in Thousand Oaks to assist with the investigation. This number grew to 188, but that still does not account for the many laboratory personnel who assisted with the case from off-site FBI facilities. The ATF were helpful in gathering information and records pertaining to the weapons used in the attack. They also assisted in the execution of a search warrant at the gun store, where Long lawfully purchased the Glock 21 back in 2016. The Department of Defense sent an agent to Thousand Oaks in order to help with the investigation. They were able to expedite information to the investigators, including records and relevant data regarding Long's time in the U.S. Marine Corps. A 38-page report was released in March of 2021 by the Ventura County Sheriff, and it held 30 recommendations for the Sheriff's Department to improve their response to mass shootings. In June of 2021, another 434-page report was released by the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. This report detailed the findings of the investigation into Long's motivation to commit this horrific crime. After the police learned of the shooter's identity, they worked to put together a motive for this seemingly non-targeted attack. They began by talking to the family, friends, and neighbors of Long. Authorities obtained a search warrant for Long's residence. As they arrived, they made contact with his mother, who immediately cooperated with police. According to the investigative summary, police didn't initially tell his mother about the shooting. Long's mother told investigators that her son was supposed to have moved out recently, on November 1st, but due to unforeseen circumstances, the plans fell through. He had reportedly been growing aggravated with his living situation, saying he hated living with her. Also, Long had been lying to his mother about having a job, telling her he worked the night shift as she slept, which was not true. When his mother confronted him, telling him he needed to get a job, Long reportedly went on a destructive rampage through the home, punching holes in the walls and breaking furniture while she was away at work. Long's mother told investigators that growing up, while in school, he was a normal kid. He did have a temper, but I assume that she felt it was normal child behavior at the time. According to her, Long had previously been involved in a serious motorcycle accident. She said that he was hospitalized for about a month, and it was during this time that he began to unravel. Their relationship had gotten so bad that they rarely had a normal conversation without arguing anymore. In fact, according to his mother, the last time they even spoke a word to each other was days before the shooting. Authorities informed Long's mother that there had been a shooting at the borderline, and they believed him to be one of the deceased due to his tattoos. His mother immediately began crying and asked, quote, "Was he the shooter?" They told her that they were still in the process of determining what happened exactly. In response, she said, quote, "You know I feel responsible. I feel so responsible. But I couldn't help him. There's nothing I could help him with. She went on to say that he had detached himself from his friends, and that he seemed to not care about anything anymore. During the search of the home, mostly in Long's room, police observed multiple holes in the walls. These were possibly holes that he punched in the wall, but I didn't find any definitive explanation for them. Investigators also interviewed Long's friends. They all told police that he had cut contact with them well over a year ago, some saying they haven't spoken to him in the last several years. They also said that Long had completely stopped using social media. Long's neighbors later recounted to police that he was an unpleasant person, often exhibiting signs of being antisocial. All of his neighbors were aware that Long was a military veteran, with some suspecting him of suffering from PTSD. Long's ex-girlfriends also gave statements that supported these beliefs, saying they noticed he may be suffering emotionally as a result of his service in the war. Authorities wanted to establish when Long began to plan this attack. They found that he had lawfully purchased his .45 caliber Glock 21 more than 2 years prior to the shooting, in August of 2016. Looking at his financial history, they also uncovered that in October of the same year, Long purchased multiple high-capacity handgun magazines. Then, in the next month, he purchased the smoke grenades, night sights, and tactical weapon-mounted lasers. In December of 2016, he purchased even more of the high-capacity magazines for his Glock 21. All of this information started to puzzle investigators. Why had Long purchased all of the equipment in late 2016, just to wait to use it 2 years later, in November of 2018? They began to suspect that the attack was originally planned to be executed in late 2016 or early 2017, and Long changed his mind for some reason. Police also dove into Long's computer contents. This search resulted in findings that Long had been visiting websites that contained violent material, such as murder, mass violence, and suicide. They found that the majority of these searches took place between December 2017 up until November 1st, 2018. He also visited websites that had information about the military, the death penalty in California, suicide rates by profession, body armor protection, and the psychology behind how and why people become killers. His search history also showed that he may have been fascinated with other acts of mass violence, as he had been looking at websites containing information about a concert bombing in London, as well as a mass shooting that took place at a school in Texas. Another discovery revealed that Long had visited the Borderline Bar and Grill website on January 6, 2018, October 16, 2018, October 22, 2018, October 31, 2018, and lastly on November 1, 2018, 6 days before the massacre. There was still a huge question in investigators' minds. Why did Ian Long commit this horrific act? There was no manifesto left behind by Long, and there was nothing on his computer that gave police an idea of his motive. The only thing he left behind that lent any insight into the reasoning for his actions was a comment he made on social media as he was positioned in the front office in the bar. It said, quote, "It's too bad I won't get to see all the illogical and pathetic reasons people will put in my mouth as to why I did it. Fact is, I had no reason to do it, and just thought, fuck it. Life is boring, so why not?" He also made a second post shortly after the first, saying, quote, "I hope people call me insane. Wouldn't that just be a big ball of irony? Yeah, I'm insane, but the only thing you people do after these shootings is hopes and prayers, or keep you in my thoughts, every time, and wonder why these keep happening." According to this post, there was no reason. Or at the minimum, maybe he wanted people to believe that he had no reason. Through investigations, it was ultimately concluded that Long most likely held a strong disdain for any person not affiliated with any branch of the US military. This is a little strange, considering that numerous of his victims were veterans or looking to join the US military in some way. But either way, the official report also stated that he had been suffering severe PTSD resulting from his military service. While they found that in their investigation, the report also stated that they weren't able to find with absolute certainty that a hatred for the college students in particular was his motive for the attack, but they did note that he seemed to dislike college students as a whole. Investigators were able to detail several encounters that Long had in the past with other students at California State University. One such incident was a time when another student told Long that, quote, "Anyone who joined the military deserved to be shot and killed overseas." This interaction may have fueled Long's potential separation from and animosity towards other college students. His mindset around college students who shared the same thought process definitely changed drastically after this encounter. He began to refer to them as college civilians, even expressing that they should be wiped off the map. It seems that a hatred for college students was a big part of his motive, as he specifically chose college night at the Borderline Bar and Grill to execute his violent attack. Based on the investigation into this tragic night, the police along with the FBI concluded that Long was solely responsible for the murders. They were able to confidently say that no one else was responsible. Obviously, no charges were filed in connection to this case, since the perpetrator is deceased. An internal investigation was conducted on the friendly fire between Officer Barrett and Sergeant Helis. The Ventura County Sheriff's Office found that Officer Barrett acted with due regard during an extremely intense and chaotic situation, in the best way that he could have. He was simply attempting to stop the active threat. They found that Officer Barrett was not only justified in using deadly force, but he was in a situation where no other option was available. Following the shooting, the Ventura County Board of Supervisors formed an organization called the Task Force on Mental Health and Safety. Their goal was to look for areas in existing mental health care systems that are lacking, in order to hopefully prevent more mass killings from occurring. In 2019, the owners of the Borderline Bar and Grill announced that they plan to renovate and eventually reopen the location. The latest news on the bar that I could find was from January 2021, where multiple sources state the building housing the bar was actually set to be demolished, although I can't find if the plan has been executed or not. In 2020, The owners ended up opening a separate location in Agoura Hills, California, called BL Dance Hall and Saloon, which, according to Google, is now permanently closed. Although, according to their Facebook page, they do have another location that is up and running called The Canyon, also in Agoura Hills. The Borderline Bar and Grill mass shooting was the third deadliest shooting in California history, as of November 7th, 2018. This just goes to show that it really doesn't matter how safe the town you live in is. Evil people can be anywhere, and horrific events can happen no matter the time or place. Regardless of previous encounters with people he didn't get along with, Long obviously had no excuse to commit the terror that he did the night of November 7th, 2018. It's tough to think that if he had just gotten help for his possible mental health issues, maybe all of the victims would be alive and well right now. I think that there needs to be more emphasis on mental health care, especially for veterans. There are so many people out there that would benefit from it, even if they aren't planning to execute a mass shooting. Overall, 12 innocent people lost their lives in such a violent and horrific way. Each and every one of them deserved to have a good night. They deserve to leave the bar and go home to their families. They deserve to live out the rest of their lives in peace. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. The research for this one took a lot of time, as I did my best to comb through hundreds of pages of information, mainly the VSCO investigative summary. I really hope I was able to clearly lay all of the details out for you guys. If I did happen to miss anything, please kindly let me know in the comments. This is the longest video I have prepared thus far, and I really hope it was done in a way that was interesting. If you did enjoy this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to my channel. As a reminder, please check out my new social media accounts that I have linked in the descriptions. I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you for sticking to the end of this very long video. I will see you next time, but until then, stay safe.